So June 28th, 2022, beautiful city of Wilsonville, state of Oregon. My name is Jong-woo Han. I am the president of World History Digital Education Foundation. We are doing this to document the amazing experience of the Peace Corps volunteers to the Korea. And here we have the volunteer Bruce Kim. So it's my great honor and pleasure to meet you, sir. And please introduce yourself. Your name, please.
Thank you, Dr. Han. My name is Bruce Kim, K-I-M. And
B-R-U-C-E.
B-R-U-C-E, Kim, K-I-M.
Yes. And what is your birthday, sir?
I was born on December 2nd, 1950.
And where were you born?
I was born in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Honolulu.
Yes.
And please tell me about your family background when you were growing up, your parents and your siblings.
Okay. My dad and mom were both born in Hawaii, both of Korean ancestry. I think my father was second generation Korean. So my grandparents on both sides, on my dad's side, immigrated from Korea back between 1903 and 1910.
1903 to 10.
Yeah. They came to work on the Hawaii plantations, the sugar plantations and pineapple plantations.
Mm-hmm.
So he was actually born on the island of Kauai.
Kauai?
Yeah.
I was just been there.
Yes. There were Koreans working on the sugar plantations in various areas in Kauai.
Your father born in Kauai?
Was born in Kauai on the plantation.
Yeah, beautiful island.
Yeah, it's terrific. A lot of people love that in terms of the environment.
Yeah.
And
I met the Korean War veteran there in Kauai. His name is Roger Stringham.
Oh.
But I found out that he drew the pictures during his service in Korea.
He kept them?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic.
And I asked him, do you still have it? And he said, yes. Where? He said, home. Can I see it? He said, yes. So we just right back into his house, and we found so many drawings of the Korean scenes and the battles. So it's been published in our website, so please check it.
Oh, I will. It's priceless.
So tell me about so you are the only son?
No, I have three other siblings, a brother and two sisters.
Two sisters?
Yes.
So 2 boys and 2 girls.
Correct.
And you are the eldest?
I'm the eldest.
And tell me about your educational background. What schools you've been through in Kauai?
I was born in Honolulu.
Yeah.
So I went to elementary school at Manoa Elementary.
Manoa
Elementary, which is near the University of Hawaii.
Yeah. Isn't that private school?
No, it's a public school. And then in the 5th grade, I went to Punahou School.
Punahou.
Correct. And then I graduated from Punahou School in 1968.
Is private?
It's a private school.
I was there.
Oh, it was, at that time it was very traditional, and it is the oldest private school west of the Rockies, and I think it was founded in 1842. And it was a very well-rounded education.
Yeah, I find it beautiful. Beautiful school, and has amazing teaching steps.
Oh, first rate. Even back when I was there, was a lot of really good teachers. And our first grandson, is now there starting off.
You have a grandson?
Yeah.
Wow, you look too young.
Yeah, not really.
So, when did you graduate the Punahou High School?
1968.
1968. And after that, what did you do? What did you want to become?
I didn't have any really firm goals at that time, educationally or professionally. And I went to school in Pennsylvania initially, and then I ended up at a college in Ohio called Wittenberg University.
Which one?
Wittenberg University.
Wittenberg. What did you study?
History.
History. And then, what happening to you in your life that you joined the Peace Corps Volunteers program?
Right.
When did you join it?
So after I got out of school, I again was not really set on any particular path, professionally or personally. And at that time, the Vietnam War was still, going on, and we were all still subject to the draft. But again, this was something personally I was wrestling with about whether I wanted to go on immediately and continue with school, and I really wasn't committed to that. So one of the options that somebody came up with, or that I came up with, was to make an inquiry to the Peace Corps. In that way, I felt like I was serving my country and giving me the space to try to find out where I fit in the world. And I sent a letter to the Peace Corps responding to one of their advertising campaigns, and I got a response back. So they asked me where, among other questions, what I was interested in and where would I like to serve. So at that time, I told them I'd like to go to Africa, because that would be something completely different for me, and allow me to see, conditions in a developing country, and to see what I could contribute or help them with. And they said, okay, we'll get back to you. And the next thing I know, I was invited to, they call it a PRIST, P-R-I-S-T, in Denver, Colorado, with a group of other individuals. And that group was formed to go to Korea.
That's a pre-invitational.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a screening thing. I think we talked to people, we were interviewed, and after that training session, then they made the final selection, I think. I'm not sure of the exact process, but we got the next notice that I got was, you're going to Korea, and you get a plane ticket and, be at this place at a certain date.
When was it? What year was that?
1972.
So you were notified to go to Korea in 1972.
Right.
What was your reaction about that? That wasn't your first choice, right?
No.
Africa was your choice.
Right. I think I had a lot of apprehension about that.
Apprehension of what?
Apprehension
Apprehension
of going to Korea.
why?
I wasn't a trained teacher. I didn't study any languages per se. I didn't know how to speak Korean except for maybe simple things like food. But beyond that, it was completely foreign to me because I had been born and raised, as an American child.
And I'm sure that there was no so much about Korea in the curriculums or textbook, right? When you were in middle school and high school,
Exactly.
right?
Right. I mean, I can remember college courses in Asian history, primarily on China. And Japan. And very little, I don't ever remember having anything come up in any of those courses about Korea or its history.
Yeah, it's always either China or Japan.
Yeah. And well, I don't want to go there, but to me that's a disservice.
Yeah,
You can't really understand what's been going on in that area of the world without understanding Korea as well, because of all this turmoil that's been going through there.
What was the reaction from your parents about the decision that the Peace Corps made for you that you are going to go to Korea? Were there any reaction from your parents?
I don't remember them being super happy about it, but I thought they thought that they would support me if that was what I was going to do. And I think my mother was concerned because it was so far.
Too far from
home.
Yeah.
And I don't remember any strong reactions.
I see.
Yeah, it was something that I decided, and they were supporting me in that.
So finally, you agreed to that, or were there any process where that you've been kind of contemplating about whether you will go to Korea or not?
So again, I had some apprehension about it because this is going to be, I could see even, or predict, even without going there, been there before, having ever been in Korea before, that this is going to be a major transition for me. And I felt that way when I got on the plane too. And I think many of the volunteers too, they didn't really understand. They were feeling some apprehension about what was going to happen. Mm-hmm. Because it wasn't, we didn't spend any time training per se on the jobs we were going to do in the States. All of our training was done in Korea.
In Korea. Uh-huh. So you are where you fit in. The first dispatchment was K1, and you're
25.
K25.
K25.
And you haven't had any training in the state about Korea or anything?
No.
Not at all?
No.
Huh.
Like I said, I was familiar with Korean food. We ate it regularly and things like that. But as far as Korean culture and Korean history, was basically unknown to me. Mm-hmm. My grandmother, who immigrated as a young girl and worked on the plantation, really didn't talk about it too much. My father went when I was a young boy and got involved in I think it started, as a Korean independence movement organization. So it was called, in sort of Korean Konglish or something like that, they called it the Kukminhae. But I think it's Kukminhue or something like that.
국민회.
Yeah.
의회.
Yeah. They had a building in one neighborhood of Honolulu. And I can remember as a child him going there regularly because he was trying to revive that organization.
Yes.
Seeing all the older people, probably all first generation, a lot of the older men and women, really meant a lot to them to go there and gather and meet their friends, mm-hmm. because they had spread out all over the place. So these gatherings, maybe semi-monthly or bi-weekly, they really enjoyed it because they could get together and see their friends. And in a plantation where life was not easy, and she had other things to worry about, like taking care of her family.
It was a sad part of our history in the turn of 20th century. Mm-hmm. And it's just like the Korean War veterans didn't want to remember what they did there because it was so cold, so damn miserable, and that war was not immediate victory at the time, and they were busy.
Right.
So I think it has some parallel between this Korean War veterans and the experience of Peace Corps volunteers and also the Korean diaspora communities. The state didn't do anything for the citizens of Korea, So.
Right.
So tell me about.
So anyway, the long story short is I didn't really understand any of the dynamics of this. 72 it was bitterly cold.
Was it Gimpo?
Gimpo River, only one bridge.
Still.
Really?
In 72?
Yeah, one bridge.
Still one bridge?
Yeah, that's all I recall. I know there's many bridges now, but that time, yeah.
It's more than close to 30, I think.
Yeah. So if there were other bridges, we never saw them. We came over the Han River Bridge, and the disturbing thing was that when we got there, I'm not sure when someone told us that martial law had just been imposed. And that was kind of unsettling. No one told us before we got on the airplane that anything like that was going to happen. And so crossing the bridge, there were many armed soldiers, tanks, machine guns.
Must be a real surprise to you.
Yeah, big eye opener.
Yeah.
Because we've never seen, that kind of military presence before. And then to find out that they had imposed martial law, and they said that this is a wake-up call because you have to be careful.
Right.
Even as Americans, we had to be careful. And I think that day, after we checked in at the hotel, they had us in Seoul.
What hotel did you check?
I don't remember at this time.
Was it Joseon Hotel?
Oh, no.
Was it Yeogwan?
No. It was a regular hotel.
Regular, okay.
Yeah. They didn't, we weren't going to go first class. We didn't do anything first class in Korea. So I think that day they bused us to the DMZ. And that was yeah. So it was really a kind of a shock to see all these visuals and then to go up to the DMZ and drive up there and see the North Korean checkpoint. You know, the first checkpoint I remember that day was the North Korean checkpoint. And all they're dressed up in heavy-duty coats and hats, and they're looking down carrying, you know, submachine guns. And they were glaring at us.
Yeah.
And then when we got there, you know, you go through the standard lecture, you know, don't point at people, don't take a picture of them, you know, don't laugh at them. Because I think, well, there was a lot of tension at that time because Korea had gone to martial law.
How many of you were in that K-25 when you arrived in Korea?
You know, I'm not sure.
Around?
I would say probably 25.
Southern Korea was not really positive.
Yeah, it was kind
Very
of
scary.
it's very unsettling.
That was Yu Shin, the President Park Chung-hee declared martial law so that he could extend his power.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So there was a lot of stuff on the streets in Seoul too.
Training program in Chuncheon. What did you learn and how was it?
So it was a compact program. We were busy. We had to learn some elements of what Korean English teaching was like in Korea at that time.
You mean TESOL program?
Yeah. So, but we studied actually, and we were exposed to how they actually teach in a Korean classroom at that time, particularly English. And they didn't really go into too many, earth-shaking ideas about how you could transform that. I later figured out that I don't think the point was for us to go in there and transform English teaching in Korea. And we ended up hitting our head against the wall a lot of times thinking that was our job, but I don't believe that it was. And we spent a lot of time on cross-cultural training and learning Korean language, writing as well as speaking. And that pretty much was our daily routine.
Well, how long was it?
It was more than 2 months, I think, just over 2 months.
Okay.
It could have been shorter.
When you're talking about the cross-cultural sort of adaptation, assimilation into the Korean community while you're there, what did you feel about it? I mean, you must be only one sort of Korean American among those 25, the first batch, your group,
Yeah,
right?
right.
All American, right?
Right.
Except you.
Yeah, I was the only Asian and only Korean American.
Korean American. And were you able to tell that you were more adaptive to it compared to other?
I think for other people it was way more difficult.
Way more difficult.
The foods, the noise, the living conditions. It was difficult. I don't remember anybody leaving because of that. They may have left afterwards, after we were sent to our teaching sites. But during training, people left, but not for that reason.
And you knew that when you joined the Peace Corps volunteer, that you're not going to be paid high, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about this logistics, that financial logistics and healthcare coverage and so on. What did you get from the Peace Corps?
You know,
How much were you paid?
I may have like a bad memory, but I don't. This is another issue that was never completely explained to us in terms of, how much we were going to get paid. Maybe I wasn't paying attention at that time. How much we were going to get paid, and how we were going to get health care. We did end up, when we finished training, with a card with our picture on it. That was our identification card. because I think they kept our passports or something like that, or I don't know that we were allowed to keep our passports, but in any event, we ended up with this card.
That's interesting.
And we were told to use that card in case, you know, of an emergency, or, you know, at that time there's a lot of, you know, inspections all over the place, and you had to show your identification card. But yeah, I don't remember them going into great detail on how we were going to get paid and how much we were going to get paid. And at that time, none of us had an expectation that we were going to make, you know, become millionaires. I mean, it's obviously not there to do that. And they did tell us the living conditions were going to be, you know, very simple, especially if we were sent out into the countryside. And as far as healthcare was concerned, that was all done through the Peace Corps office in Seoul. So if we really got sick, we either had to get care locally, or through the Peace Corps in Seoul. And I think locally they made arrangements. You know, if you had, like you were injured or something, you had to go to a hospital. I think Peace Corps took care of that. But the main healthcare was all centered in Seoul. And then sometimes they would send out teams into the different provinces so you could get injections, you know, like that.
So after training, where were you assigned to, and what did you do actually?
So I completed training, and I had an interview with the in-country director at that time. And we had a long discussion about what my goals or purposes were being in Korea. And I told him, you know, I want to complete my service. And he asked me where I wanted to go, and I said I want to go to a town by the ocean.
Ocean.
Yeah, ocean means a lot to me, having been born and raised in Honolulu. But he couldn't understand that. I don't know what the issue was with him, but eventually they assigned me to Samcheonpo, Korea.
Samcheonpo?
Which doesn't exist anymore.
That was in eastern, northeast?
Southern.
Southern?
So yeah, coast. In Gyeongsang-namdo.
Oh.
Near Jinju.
I see. Yeah. And?
So I was assigned to the Samcheonpo Namjunghakyo, boys.
Namjunghakyo.
Yeah, boys middle school, and to assist the teaching staff in English, you know, teaching English.
Not directly teaching?
No, I was teaching. So I had a co-teacher who brought me down from Seoul to Samcheonpo. So I was supposed to work with him in terms of...
Co-teacher means the Korean partner.
Right.
Who was the teacher?
Actual teacher at Samcheonpo.
Yeah. So you are teamed with them.
Right.
Yeah.
So I met him in Seoul, and we went down together back to Samcheonpo. And
did he speak English?
yeah, pretty good.
Huh.
Pretty good. He had went to college in Korea, in Seoul somewhere.
You remember his name?
I think his last name was Kim, but I don't remember what his first name
Okay.
was. He left shortly thereafter.
So you teach students directly too, but also you assisted. You also help
The staff.
English teachers to be able to teach.
To the extent that they wanted help, yeah. And so it was again, another situation where you were put into without much preparation or, I don't know if support's the right word, but preparation maybe. So it was dropped into a situation with this co-teacher who I had just met. And
you deal yourself.
yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much,
Make it of it what you will. And I met the rest of the whole middle school teaching staff and the couple of English teachers besides him who taught English in the school. But I never got the impression that I was supposed to do much beyond that. And certainly I don't remember working with the other Korean English teachers in that school, only with him. And so again, this was kind of uncomfortable for me because no one explained to me what I was supposed to do there. And we weren't really prepared, you know, in terms of, we want you to do X, Y, and Z. And yeah, so like you said, it was whatever you make of it. So that certainly came to mind shortly after I got my bearings. And Samchepo is way far away from everything.
Absolutely.
It's about as far away as you
I
can.
had to think where it was,
Yeah.
and now I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's now called Sachonshi. Sachonshi.
Sachan, yes. Got it.
I don't know why, but somebody tried to explain that to me once. And I actually saw a Korean drama about some controversy about changing Samchepo to Sachonshi on a Korean drama. So that sort of like gave some explanation about why that happened. I thought that was kind of unbelievable. Because Sachin, when I was there, was a very small town. It was like a bus stop on the way from Jinju to Samchepo. So.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So what was your first day with the direct encounter with the Korean students?
So
Boys, tell me about it. What is the first day? How was it?
it was.
Did you like?
It was cold. It was very.
No heating system.
There was no heating in that school. They had a charcoal stove in the classroom with a yantan stove, but they never turned on that I remember. The only heat source I remember was in the kyomusho, in the teacher's room. So it was cold. The students were like, dressed in black uniformly, sat at rough wooden desks. It was cold, and this is a country school, so nobody's, nothing fancy, very plain, and it didn't take me long to get into that routine because basically I was like, teaching them English phrases, sounds, how to pronounce words, reading with them, and doing some lessons, on the chalkboard and with, pictures we drew or something to try to create a story so they could use that, which is something they never, I think it was foreign to them, that way of getting taught. And trying to engage them in terms of not just repeating, what I say, but trying to understand, what these words meant. If you combine them in these combinations, then you could get a dialogue, And like you would have to make up that dialogue. I'm not going to tell you what to say. You need to figure it out and try to train them that way. Because I think before I got there, and in Korean education at that time for English language, it's mostly rote memorization.
Yep.
Because they had to pass that exam. So
I remember that.
yeah, you probably very well remember that. So it was, and some of them really enjoyed that. The young boys, they really enjoyed that. I think the smarter ones really enjoyed that because it engaged them there intellectually, rather than just sitting there and memorizing something. They were actually using their minds to respond to questions or ask questions. So that part was very, interesting to me because I thought that, in the very least, this is some small contribution I could make to try to engage the students, to see that English is a living language and you could use it to actually help yourself. And the idea that the smarter ones in the class, were 100% invested into it because this is something that they could really use going on to university if that was their desire.
What was it like to be in the small boys middle school classroom teaching English as Korean American, and as you said to yourself and to me that you didn't have much background about Korean society, culture, and history. What was it like?
We had been exposed to some of this in training because we were sent out on trips to various parts of the country to work with existing Peace Corps volunteers and to sort of introduce us to what their lives were like and how, their work life was like. So I had some exposure to that before arriving in Samchepo. But like you said, being in there day in and day out and figuring out what's exactly happening here and what is my role, because no one told me what my role is. What is my role and how will I fit in here? It was kind of a shock to me, and it took me a long time to get my feet in terms of what exactly I can do to make a contribution. And so the other complicating factor was that the man that was going to be my co-teacher there left abruptly in the middle of my first semester. And I had been living with him and working with him. And the school, when he left, I don't know the school knew what to do with me. Because I think he was the key to bringing me there or making the school believe that they could have a volunteer. And so I was kind of really thrown for a loss when he left. I had to go find another place to live. I'd lost that support on the teaching staff because the other teachers were not invested in that, and that was not part of their deal, you know. So I think, and the school I think wrestled with that too. You know, I thought that was sad.
Him?
Huh?
Nobody replaced him?
No.
No. So you were left alone.
Yeah, there were, you know, so among the remaining English teaching staff. So they didn't know what to do with me either. I don't really think.
Where did you live and what was the living condition?
So I lived in a boarding house.
Boarding house.
Yeah, multiple different boarding houses. So that was really unsettling for me too because I was hoping that, you know, somebody would help me find a place to live that, again, this is more like entrepreneurial side of Peace Corps. You know, I have the time or the inclination, not knowing anything about Samcheonpo, never having lived there before, about how I was going to find a new place to live. So I went back to the teaching Kyomushil and, you know, asked them, can somebody help me find some place? And the school felt some kind of like obligation to help me. But, so I lived in different hasuchips. And so the whole experience at that time was made more difficult by this transition thing after the guy left. And I was put in this, you know, left in this position, again, without much support, if any, from the Peace Corps in Seoul, which is like a whole different place, you know, from where I was living. Yeah.
You didn't have a cellular phone at the time.
Yeah,
You don't have iPhone, Samsung Galaxy, so that you can talk with your people, members, and family. That must have been really hard. Yeah. Were you able to travel from Samcheonpo to other places?
So, more so as a coping mechanism, after all this turmoil happened, I went to visit friends from my training group who were like at that time it was called Chungmu, but now it's Tongyang, I think, something like that. And then I had friends in Busan. And so I would catch the ferry to visit them on the weekends from time to time. Sometimes I would go spend in the town and I'd go hiking all over the place because it was very beautiful, that area of Korea, I think. And taking pictures and things like that. I would go to Jinju on the weekend to try to get Time Magazine or Newsweek or something. Yeah. But I found things to do.
What do they say, the people, the friends that you visited, Tongyang and Busan, what do they say about their experience there?
No, it's not normal.
Not normal.
Yeah. They had a lot of institutional support from their schools. More I didn't get that.
More support from the institution.
Correct.
But you
to
were
take
left alone.
Right, to take care of the volunteers and make sure that they were okay. Yeah. So they're very solicitous of them. They had co-teachers who were very solicitous of them and tried to help them.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. I heard from Greg about it. When did you leave Korea? When were you job done?
December of 74.
74. So you were there almost like 2 years, right? And you didn't want to extend.
You know, no one told me I could. I might have done it if I got to some place that was more, you know, amenable to me. I might have done it.
So you were in Samcheonpo all the time?
Right, for the entire 2 years.
Entire
Mm-hmm.
period. And during your service there for 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
what was the most rewarding moments that you still remember if I ask you to pinpoint only one?
I think the relationship that I had with some of the students.
Students.
Right. They really helped motivate me and motivate me to continue doing that work.
Can you give me some episode about it?
For some, well, it's not. I think people think in Korea at that time, and maybe even to today, that people in the country are like useless, and they have like really a lot of prejudice about them. About the way they, especially in the South, about the way they talk, and all kinds of different biases.
Biases about what?
About we're in Seoul, we're the best, and you guys, how can you compete with us, and things like that.
Oh.
They look down their nose, at the people in the countryside, because at that time, Korea was not the industrial modern society that is today. I mean, I think at that time was primarily agricultural. So that's Samcheonpo, was fishing and agriculture.
Yep.
And so the most rewarding thing for me was to know that some of the students that I had worked with became very fluent in English. They could read and write pretty much anything I gave them. So I tried to focus on them, because again, I'm making progress here, and maybe the teachers can see that if you just work with them, individually, that you can make a lot of progress with, at least in terms of English. So a lot of them, were very, very bright. So I think the most rewarding thing to me is to know that after they moved on or left Samcheonpo Middle School, some of them ended up at Seoul National, and that
from Samcheonpo.
From Samcheonpo, against all that adversity. They didn't have the hagwons, all this other kind of stuff available to, nor did they have resources to even think about competing that way. But they were very smart, bright young men. So that was rewarding to me to know that, first of all, because of me, I was able to help them facilitate, their study of English, to the point where they became, nearly fluent in it. And then without any, not accent, but they wouldn't mess up on the R's and the L's. They got that down. And
That's
and
the hard part.
Oh yeah, for sure. And
Still
then
hard for me.
yeah, even to learn later on that some of them went to Seoul National was very rewarding. And then the other thing that happened was, I think in 2011 or 2012, something like that, I went back to Korea and I visited Samcheonpo. And one of the teachers that I knew after my co-teacher left, I became more friendly with. But he took me out to lunch, and he invited a dentist from Samcheonpo to come to attend the lunch with us. And his story was, and he told me that, Mr. Kim, I was just one of those kids in one of the classrooms you taught at while I was there. And
So he was your former student?
Yeah, I never met him before. I never knew that he was my student. And he told me that, all I remember is, and it sticks with me to this day, is you teaching me how to pronounce R and L, to distinguish between those two sounds. And I just laughed out loud. I thought, wow, if I did that, then good on me. And he was very, very, he had very fond recollections of that. That was very rewarding. And he too went to Seoul National from that tiny town, and went to Seoul National Dental School. And then good for him, he decided to practice dentistry back in Samcheonpo.
That's really noble thing.
Very, very noble. Yeah. So I thought that was a really a great story.
You must have done a good job there.
I don't know. I don't know if I did.
You still in contact with some of the students?
No, unfortunately, I'm not. I lost contact with them. I've asked after them when I visited, and most of them are gone. They left Samcheonpo.
So was it invited by the Korea Foundation that you were able to go back to Samcheonpo, or did you do it by yourself? In
Since
2011?
since leaving Korea in '74, I've been back multiple times.
Multiple times.
In '86, I went back with my wife, and we went to Samcheonpo in '86. And then more recently, I started to travel back there in the 2000s. And I took my two oldest daughters with me the first time. And then in 2011, I think I did a revisit, the Friends of Korea revisit. That's when, we went back there. And my daughters have all met and been to Samcheonpo too, and met the one Korean teacher that I had stayed in contact with. So they were exposed to that. But, and then after that, I think I went back in 2015. Since then, I haven't been back. Yeah.
What did you do after you come back from Korea?
Oddly enough, when I returned to the United States, it was another culture shock. I had been living, so minimalistically, so to speak, and simply.
In Korea for 2 years.
Yeah, not access to television, telephones, just traveling around like normal Koreans, at that time, to catch the bus, the train.
You exactly look like Korean, so.
Yeah, although that's a subject of controversy too. But traveling around and things like. So when I got back to America and eating only Korean food, so when I got back to America, it took another change, and I didn't realize that Korea affected me that much until I came back to America. I tried to reconnect with people that I had known from college and things like that. And I just felt like I need to be somewhere,
Again.
And unfortunately it's led to some, personally some broken relationships. And because it was hard for them to understand what I had gone through and what I was going through in terms of a transition.
Wow.
And I couldn't deal with it either. I wanted to go back to see my volunteer friends because we had something in common that was, very important to us. So there was a big transition again until I ended up in law school in 1975.
So you become a lawyer?
Yeah.
And looking back this years, you saw Korea in 1972 under the martial law, and especially because you were in Samcheonpo, the Korea was more agricultural, very underdeveloped, right? Still poor, but now you know Korea what it is now.
Yeah.
It's the 10th largest economy in the world.
Yeah.
And the visit, the President Biden made a visit in Korea was Samsung Electronics. And that was his first visit to Asia, and he chose to be in Korea and chose to be in Samsung Electronics. What do you think about this transition? You know this, right? And it's a little bit different because I asked this question to the American veterans who didn't know damn thing about Korea at all. But to you, as a Korean American, you are familiar with it. But still, what is the before and after picture, and what do you think about it?
So we've discussed already, about what the Korean economy and was like, and life was like back in the early 70s. And at that time, they were still, from even talking to the Koreans that I met in Samcheonpo, what a devastating thing the Korean War was to them and their country, to them personally and to their country. So when we were there in 72, the country was just sort of at the cusp, of exploding into the modern economic power that it's become today. I mean, Samsung was there, they were building ships in Ulsan, they had a lot of big industry, heavy industries, cars and things, but that was only the start of it.
Yeah.
And So there was a tremendous amount of, energy that we could feel, especially in the major cities. But to see the transformation into what it's become today it's too much to fully process, because we only see Korea from in our memories. A lot of our emotional ties are to the places where we served, and to see now what Korea has become, it's unbelievable. And for me, I feel a lot of I think I'm proud that they did that. I think, I know from living there and listening to them talk about their, limited discussions we had about their history, what devastation was wreaked on that country from either the Japanese occupation and then the Korean War, and to transform into this modern society, modern industrial, giant. It's unbelievable. It's just mind-blowing how they devoted all of their energy as a country, and in terms of getting things done. At least you can say that for the people that ran Korea during that time. They got things done. But at what cost? That's not for me to say. Some historian will make that judgment, but it's amazing.
Had you ever imagined that Korea would become like this today when you left Korea in 1970?
Not that fast. Not that fast. Not that quickly. Even Samcheonpo is totally transformed.
They changed so fast.
It was incredible. Yeah. The roads, they built out infrastructure. The city is just now all full of towering condominiums. From that sleepy fishing town that I knew back in the early 70s. It's unrecognizable almost. Unrecognizable.
What about impact of your service as a Peace Corps volunteers for 2 years in Korea in 1970 upon your life? Mm-hmm. What is the legacy of Peace Corps in your private life, mm-hmm. and overall, what do you think that Peace Corps program mm-hmm. did for Korea, mm-hmm. and for the people who participated in that program from the United States? Mm-hmm. I think it's a mutual thing, right? Mm-hmm. The Greg told me that when I asked this question, he said that just replied immediately back to me saying that we rather learn a lot from this rather than we taught them.
Yep.
So please.
So, Americans have unconscious bias about being the kings of the universe. Unfortunately, a lot of things that Korea does internationally comes about because they don't have a clear understanding or appreciation for the cultures that they're dealing with. Like you said, even in Asia, they may be focused on some other places like Japan and China, and not really and assume the Koreans are just like the Chinese and the Japanese, which is a bad mistake. So when we got there, like all Americans, we thought like, well, this is no problem, why can't you understand that this is the way it's got to be? And I think many volunteers, not only in Korea, have that bias, trying to understand what they were about. I tried to take that into my law practice, to try to take what I learned, the skills that I learned in the Peace Corps, and use it in my law practice. But practicing law is not like dealing with, normal people. It's very tough and contentious. So in that sense, my career was like a lot of that type of law because I did mostly litigation. But I thought at the end of the day that, I could hold my head up high because, I help a lot of people. And I think the Peace Corps gave me that desire to go out and try to make a difference in the world.
Excellent points. Mm-hmm. Recognizing being different, I think that's really important in these days. If I ask you, this Peace Corps program, volunteer program, it's an amazing kind of part of our history between U.S. and Korea. Mm-hmm. And I want to revive that spirit and the experience for the future. In some sense, for the future generations in both in the United States and Korea, so that we can enhance the mutual understanding and learning from the history. What do you think we can do? I'm brainstorming right now about this and see if we can come up with some sort of project where that we can draw the lesson from your experience and all many other Americans and also the people from Korea.
You know, I haven't really thought much about that. You know, I was active in the Friends of Korea. I was on the board for a period of time. They are working, you know, to try to keep that going, because that is the third goal of Peace Corps, which is to return to America and educate people about the host cultures that they had experienced during their service. I think, you know, we've talked about today, you know, the cross-cultural emphasis of the Peace Corps is something that is very beneficial for the host country as well as the giving country, assuming it's done with the genuine, you know, heart. So projects that would, you know, foster that kind of cooperation and cross-cultural exchanges, I think are critical, because I don't think America gets enough. Like you said, the Korean culture and history is very not well known in America. And I know Friends of Korea has worked with Korea Foundation to, especially on the revisit part of it. One of the highlights of my revisit to Korea under the Korea Foundation program was to go to Koika and to learn that. To learn that they took the spirit of the Peace Corps, their experience of peace. Exactly. They wanted to take that spirit and share it with other countries using young Korean people. It was fabulous. And to meet the young men and women that were going out on these assignments, it was like deja vu all over again, you know, to see them and meet them.
So we can think about establishing some sort of, what is it? Volunteer group to share the experience for the future generations, that they can do the same thing for others.
So the meeting at Koika that I attended, one of the good things was that these young men and women are going to go to various corners of the world, many undeveloped countries. And there was a lot of synergy there, because they wanted to know from the Peace Corps volunteers, how do you deal with alienation, loneliness, you know, adjusting.
Even for themselves.
And to serve the greater purpose, you know, without losing focus on the greater purpose. And so they found a lot of the stories that we talked about. I think we broke into groups and we did roundtables with the new ones, and that was really beneficial for them to hear it, even though it wasn't, you know, from the Korean cultural perspective, but just from the volunteers' perspective of when you go to these countries, right? How do you preserve yourself, and at the same time try to accomplish, you know, your goal of helping them, without being, you know, obnoxious or, you know, overbearing, or which is something you're just going to have to learn anyway, because you can't keep beating your head against the wall and nothing happens. You finally reach an accommodation where you say, look, if I can't communicate with these people, I might as well go home now, because I'm not going to get anything done. And they're not going to get anything out of me. So I thought that was really good. And like those kind of, you know, more formal institutional exchanges would be, you know, would be good.
I want to keep in touch with you about this potential kind of ideas.
Oh, great.
Where we can continue to draw on from your lesson and your experience. So
feel free to do so.
It's a great honor and pleasure to meet you, sir, and thank you for sharing your experience. And really, I think that your perspective is quite different from other regular member of Peace Corps volunteers who are Americans.
Right.
And white, and you are in between. So I think it will be a great addition to this whole documentary and the interview project if we develop it as a reel. So I want to thank you, sir.
So I'm glad, thank you very much for that, and I'm glad that Greg, asked me to do this, and I really feel, I was a little apprehensive, but I feel a whole lot better now after getting to meet you and doing this interview with you. I hope it'll be of some help to you and your group.
Absolutely.
Great.
I really enjoyed it because, as I mentioned, your perspective is different from the regular. And I think it gives us a lot of insight, especially about the cross-cultural sort of understanding of different people in different regions, which really matters in this contemporary society.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So great to meet you, sir.
Same here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.